trying to get to rivers of resilience and this land of flourishing where we can support one another and have true security.
Figuring out, how can I be the change? How can I make a difference?
We're just really scratching the surface. The greatest migration is underway. It is changing every facet of our economy and our lives. Join us as we explore the stories of the entrepreneurs who are on the front lines of that change, the kind of change that matters. Hi, my name is Alfa Damalash. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Rising Tide Capital. And for the past 20 years, we have been on the front lines of change, transforming lives and communities through entrepreneurship.
Today's special guest is Towanda McEachern. She's the founder of the Empowerment Studio in Newark, New Jersey. Hear Towanda share how she turned her personal healing into powerful transformation and how her journey of resilience and empowerment is creating space for others to flourish.
A coach, a star instructor, paying it forward and pouring it out in many, many different ways for entrepreneurs who are just getting started on their journeys or who are navigating change, transformation in their lives and in their businesses. Tell me a little bit about how you got started. Why did you get on this journey of entrepreneurship?
Wow. When you start talking about going back, right?
Yes.
But honestly, my life was a mess, honestly. When I think about the trauma and the abuse and all the things that I went through in my life, I was so broken. And it was just like, and I realized that broken people and broken parents can raise broken children. And I realized that my daughters were watching me. So I have 2 daughters, and I wanted to make sure that I send the right message to them. And so I'm like, I started doing the work on myself. So I went to workshops and trainings and all types of classes, and I started reading books, and I just started doing all the things because I'm like, I need to be better. Yeah. But then I saw other women who looked just like me, and especially in particular, one of my sisters who actually, she was recently killed in a car accident. And I looked at her life as a teen mom, and then I looked at my mom's life as a teen mom. And I'm like, we have to do something different. And I don't want my daughters to go down this same path. And so I just started figuring out, how can I be the change? How can I make a difference, right? And then I had other women who, on my time as a property manager, would come into my office, and then they can't pay their rents, and then they have all of this stuff going on in their apartments, and they're in my office, and I'm like, girl, what is going on? And before I knew it, I was coaching them.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's just like, you're supposed to be working, okay? But you're doing full-fledged coaching sessions in here. But all of them had the same issue, the same story. It was just different. The storyline was different, but at the root of it, they were all dealing with rejection, insecurity, trust, abandonment issues. And so I just decided to do classes. I said, I'm gonna go to the library, ask them, how much does it cost to have a class here? And I had a class, printed some flyers. I didn't know what I was doing, but I knew I wanted to do something.
I love that.
And that's how it all started. I don't want us to continue to keep repeating that cycle. And so I said, okay, well, what can I do? And so I just started doing my own work. Like, so when I say my first student, literally my first student, I started reading, I started studying, I started going to workshops, I started going to conferences and all of those things because I wanted my life to be better. And so I have a background in property management and so in affordable housing. So it's so interesting because a property manager, people don't realize it. We have all the insight to how people live, right? Exactly. So we know how people's houses look. We know when they can't pay their rent. We know if there is abuse in the home, domestic violence. We know when the cops are called, all of those things, right? And all those things were at my doorstep in my office. And so the women were coming in with all of these issues. And they were coming in and they couldn't pay their rent and they had all of these things going on. And so I found myself in my office coaching before I even knew what coaching was.
Wow.
And I'm helping them set up plans. And I'm like, listen, this is what you need to do. Because first of all, girl, your rent is $75 and why can you not pay it? Right? So I'm trying to understand the disconnect because I'm looking at her rent and I'm looking at my mortgage like there's a disconnect somewhere, right? And so I just started talking to them. And then I realized one by one, at the core and the base of it, they all were dealing with the same issues. And it was rejection,
Yes.
insecurity,
Yes.
trust, and abandonment. All of those were at the root. Now, how they dealt with it and how the stories unfolded were different. But at the root of it, when I started to drill down, so I said, okay, because I was sounding like a broken record. So I said, okay, you know what? I think I'm gonna start teaching some classes. So I said, I went down to the library. How much does it cost to get a room here? I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't even know if this was gonna work or not, but I was just like, I have to do something, right? And so I went to the library, and this was back in 2007 when I first started this. And I rented a room, and weeks leading up to that, I gathered a couple of my friends, and I made some flyers, and we went to the parks, and we went all over the city of Newark, and we just started handing out flyers. We went to the council people's office. We were like, I just went in there. First of all, I don't even know how I knew to do this stuff, right? It's just like, yes, I'm Towanda, and I'm here, okay? And this is what I'm doing, and I would tell anybody that will listen.
Yep.
And so I just started this transformational journey for women, and it started out as a 6-month program, then it turned into a 6-week program, and so it just continued to evolve from there. And that, honestly, that's how I got started, and I never looked back.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
One of the things that about what you shared that is so striking to me is how similar our journeys are on one level, because that part about just making flyers and going out and telling everybody about it,
Yep.
and you don't even know.
Yeah, like you don't even know what you're doing. Like, first of all,
don't even
girl,
know
who
what
told
you're
you to
doing.
do that? Like, how do you even know to do that?
Yeah. I mean, my co-founder Alex and I were 22 and 23, right? And we're like, okay, we're sounding like a broken record
Yeah.
about like how someone could work on creating their business,
Yeah.
and then, but we're going, what do we know about that? We were not MBAs. We had very little exposure to anything other than our parents being entrepreneurs.
Right.
And so that part about role modeling is so important. So we'd grown up watching our parents do things
Right.
that told us that, well, when you have an idea, then you go sit down, you create, a little roadmap, and you
Yep.
print a flyer, and you just start going and talking about it, and then
Telling anybody who will listen.
yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. You talked a little bit about, abandonment, and we actually talk about the land of abandonment. We have this big story we've been working on and workshopping called the Greatest Migration.
Okay.
And we talk about these different lands that people are in, and we're all trying to get to rivers of resilience and this land of flourishing where we can support one another and have true security. Because as you know, money is one thing,
Right.
but if there's no bread on the streets, you can't, like, it doesn't matter how much money you have,
Right. Exactly.
you can't eat the money.
There's no resources for it. Yeah.
So you actually need a whole lot of other things, a whole lot of other people who are starting things, who are
Right.
growing the grain, who are baking the bread,
Right.
So you need this community. And so anyway, I mention all that because this land of abandonment is definitely something that many of us who are at Rising Tide, have a personal connection to.
Right.
We're doing this mission because we've seen suffering,
Yep.
and we know how powerful hope can be.
Yeah.
And we know that there are also powerful skills you learn when you're in the land of abandonment. Just because government and corporations and all of those, resource holders, you may feel abandoned by them.
Right.
You may feel abandoned by your loved ones even. And yet it doesn't mean that you're not learning.
Right.
And I'm curious if you could say a little bit more about what you think you took out of your journey and the times that you felt like you're in the land of abandonment.
Right. As you were mentioning abandonment, the first word that just kept coming to me was resilient. Because when you're dealing with all of that, the abandonment, like the rejection, all of those things, you have no other choice but to rise above it. You either, well, let me not say you don't have a choice, because you can stay in it.
Yeah.
But if you decide and make a decision that you no longer want to live there anymore, You have to be resilient because it's literally almost as if you're clawing your way out of it. You're digging, you're scratching, you're pulling, you're kicking because it's like, I want out. And so being able to be resilient enough to know, okay, this is hard, but I'm going to keep going. Because when I think about the ladder, we're not going back there.
Yeah.
We're not going back there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit more about that process because I think, you are so masterful at helping us to see that resilience is not the end of the story, that there is flourishing, there is thriving, even as you are evolving and growing. And a lot of times there's that feeling that when you're going through it, you just want it to be over.
Yeah,
But the reality is life is a journey.
it is.
And so choosing to thrive as you are being resilient, as you are rising, and choosing to see that work, that journey, not as something that is meant to be over so you can get to somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that because I've loved hearing you share about thriving.
Well, first, it's really honestly, it's all a journey. So when you come to the realization that it is a journey, that's when you can kind of settle into it and understand, okay, I am going somewhere, but it's not an actual destination. Because sometimes we think that we're running from here to there to there, and you're not. It's just this one big long road. It never ends until it ends.
Yeah.
And when it ends, that's when we're done, right? But just thinking about the journey, I was saying this to someone today. I love where I am right now in my life, right? Because it took me a long time to get to this point. And I saw all the hills, all the valleys, the ups and downs, all of those things that really, really were developing me. If it had not been for those things, I wouldn't be able to be here right now, sitting on this seat with you, doing all the work that I'm doing, if I didn't understand that this was all a part of the journey. I remember so many times asking, well, when is it going to be my turn? Right? When is it going to be my turn? Right? And what I realized in that, first of all, God had to quiet that in me.
Yeah.
Because it's like, first of all, girl, it's your turn when I say it's your turn. Now relax, right? So after you get finished going through your temper tantrums, right, and you start to relax and it's just like, okay, I realized that had I gotten a lot of the things that I asked for when I asked for them, I would not have been ready.
Oh, truth. Yes.
I would not have been ready.
Yes.
There was more development that needed to take place, especially character-wise, humility-wise. All of those things needed to take place in me so that I can be able to be the person that I can stand before people and say, listen, I know you're going through this. I know you've gone through this. Hold on.
Yeah.
On the other side,
Yes.
it gets better.
Yes. I think the message of, being still and staying and realizing there are parts of you that need to grow to meet the moments that are meant to be yours is really, really profound. And for 20 years, we've been on MLK Boulevard in Jersey City in Newark and Lafayette. And it's a neighborhood where there is a lot of hardships. And even when we were starting, where the idea is people wanting to leave, right, to get out of here. And I mean, I grew up in Ethiopia. I was born and raised in Ethiopia. And a lot of my family and my cousins, they wanted to get out of there. And so this idea of going away, getting out of there, it's been something that is kind of fixed in our mind. And there's been a lot of education in my own life too, to be like, there is a lot to be learned. There's a lot of wealth to be gained and wisdom to be gained by staying put and realizing that your choices and your journey are not limited by that decision.
That's true.
And I have been amazed watching how even our organization, which still works locally, has now national partners and is working in all these other communities. As you know, you've been doing instruction for Community Business Academy students, and during COVID, we went, online, and you have all these community partners who are figuring it out, and then they're
Right.
doing it in their community in real life, and I'm watching all of that and the kinds of places that we've been and have been able to touch, but we haven't had to leave this block. And so there's something I think that we as a community and as a society maybe need to orient ourselves to say staying doesn't mean you haven't moved or grown or that there is no wealth or wisdom to be gained where you are. Sometimes the whole world entire is waiting to meet you on that street block that you're trying to get away from. Yeah, tell me, what's coming
That's
up for you?
because no, I'm listening to you, and you have put it in such great context because that is the goal. The goal has always been for people to, in their minds, if I can just get out of here.
Yeah.
But now listening to you put it in that context and realizing that getting out of here is not, that's not the big dream that we should be alluding to, right? It's getting out of here.
Yes. Uh-huh.
It's the mindset shift
Yeah.
that has to happen because your location doesn't necessarily mean that that's your destination,
Yes.
right? That's just where you are physically.
Yes. Think about Mandela.
Exactly.
Or like think about all the people in the world who are our brothers and sisters who can't get out of places and spaces.
And that's why, and honestly, that's why the work of transformation is so important because when we are renewed in our mind.
Yeah.
Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Yeah.
When you renew your mind, that shifts everything. You change your thinking
Yeah.
and you will change your living.
Yes.
And that's ultimately what it is. So it has nothing to do with where you are because honestly, you can affect change wherever you are if you have the right mindset.
Oh, preach. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. So, turning a page here,
Okay.
I am curious about your.
I'm not curious. What you curious about, Elsa?
I'm curious about your evolution as an entrepreneur and a social entrepreneur. You've been doing transformational coaching, and a Life Recycled is the company.
Right.
And then you morphed that into the Empowerment Studio, or maybe they're alongside. So you have your work in the world of property management, you have your coaching work, Life Recycled, you have the Empowerment Studio. First, say a little bit more about a Life Recycled and the Empowerment Studio in particular, which I know is the newest
The newest brainchild.
brainchild. Yes, exactly.
And really, a Life Recycled and the Empowerment Studio is just, they're really one and the same.
Okay.
I wanted a studio, but it's to explain to people what a Life Recycled studio is easier to say empowerment.
Yeah.
Right. So that was easier. So that's therefore how I came up with the Empowerment Studio. But the work really honestly is one and the same. And how the studio even came about was because I would be going to hotels to give workshops and trainings. I would find all of these little holes in the walls, little cabin spaces, all of these things. And then I would have to go in and transform them.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be able to set a vibe. Because first of all, you come to the studio, it's a whole vibe.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes, I
It's
know.
a vibe.
I feel empowered just the moment I walk through the door.
And that's what people say.
Yes,
Honestly, that is what
yes.
people say from the moment they walk in the door.
Yeah.
And so, but what was happening was I got tired of transforming the space. We would go into the hotels and they had these ugly green tablecloths and there's just the carpet and just everything. And I was just like, ew. Like, I was just like, no, like,
Not sending the right.
it's not like
it's
I'm
not
trying to
setting the scene.
do some transformation here
Yeah.
to lives, not this room,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I had to transform the whole room, and so it just started getting really costly because I'm buying props and materials and all these things to try to make it look like something.
Yeah.
And then every time I had a thought and an idea for something that I wanted to teach or do, I was starting this process all over again.
Yeah.
So I said, you know what? I think, one, I'm not the only one that's having this problem. There are other coaches, there are other teachers, there are other people who are looking for this space.
Absolutely.
So you don't see what you want, you create it. And so that's exactly what I did. So I told my daughter, this child is so creative. My
I
oldest
love
daughter,
it.
she's so creative.
She's taking after her. You see, the children of entrepreneurs.
Like, but when I tell you the creativity in this child's bones, okay, it's in
Yes.
her bones, right?
Yeah.
She used to, when we were younger, when she was younger, should I say, she used to draw Mickey Mouse and stuff all over my walls, and she's like 4 years old.
Amazing.
And she would rearrange her room and she would decorate. I'm like, you're 5. Why are you moving dressers and things, right? Like, what's going on here? But she had it in her.
Yeah.
And so she has a hair studio, so she does hair, right?
Okay.
And she designed it so beautiful.
Oh,
I said, can you do that for the studio?
okay.
So she kept coming in and she was like, okay, I can do this, that, or whatever. And then I'm like, well, how much is that going to cost, right? Because every time I turned around, she had a different idea for this and a different idea. And then in the studio, there are 15 feet high wall ceilings. And so she's like, yeah, and I'm going to put on the wall, she is worthy. She is fierce. She is enough. I'm like, how are you getting up there? You know, it was just this whole process.
Yeah.
But by the time we were done, every ounce of that studio, it speaks to empowerment. It speaks to transformation. It speaks to healing. Like when I leave there and I turn the lights out, and it never fails, I turn around and I thank God for what He has given me, and that I get to be the gatekeeper of it.
The steward. Amazing.
Like, you would allow me to be able to open up these doors so other women can come in
Yeah.
and have this space.
I still remember the opening day.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was so amazing and beautiful. And I was having my own personal moment when I walked through that door because I saw a community of beautiful women who are holding this space and bringing it to life. And, you know, at Rising Tide, we talk about this idea of social capital.
Right.
That the biggest thing that we could do is to weave the community of entrepreneurs together so they can collaborate and they can figure it out. You know,
Right.
we don't try to be heavy-handed around it, but by creating the containers,
Right.
by having the Community Business Academy just so, by having it be facilitated by people who understand the journey, like you know, that this community and the ongoing support that they're receiving from other coaches and other professional service providers, that builds a network,
Right.
that builds that community of resilience that we're looking for. And I walked through the door and I saw so many Rising Tide entrepreneurs in the room. Do you remember?
I
mean,
do.
you called them there. You pulled them together. So who were some of the people there? What was going on? Do you remember?
I just remember, honestly, putting out the call
Yeah.
and saying, listen, this is what this is going to be.
Yeah.
And show up. And a lot of, and especially, and you know this, when you are in the business as an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
All of your friends tend to be entrepreneurs
Yeah.
because y'all get each other.
Birds of a feather.
Exactly. So we understand the late nights. We understand the tears. We understand all of those things. So, you know, we become friends.
Yeah.
And people show up to support.
Yeah.
And then
Photographers, the caterers,
everything.
the
I tried to use the network.
I love that about about you. And what you do. 'Cause you're
I
just
tried
a
to
built
use it
community. You weave them.
because we have this already.
We do.
And this is why, and I'm gonna tell you something, right? When I came to Rising Tide in 2016,
Yeah.
I was on a hiatus for 2 years from my business, right?
Okay.
And from 2007 to 2014, right?
Okay.
By the time 2014 came, I was so burnt out because I didn't really know what I did not know, right? And I was out running and ripping and doing the work. And one day my husband said to me, he said, so you're going to be out there saving everybody else while we're broken in here. I had no balance.
Oof.
I was just going, going, going.
Yeah.
And when he said that, it was almost as if it was a gut punch to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, okay, Towanda, I had a decision to make.
Mm.
I knew I wanted to continue to work,
Yeah.
but I also knew that my family
So important.
is my first ministry.
First.
Okay, my
Yeah.
family is my first. And when he
Yeah.
said that to me, and then I looked up and I also remember that I have years from my youngest daughter's life
Yeah.
that I do not remember
Mm.
because I was busy doing the work. And in my mind, I'm like, she's with her father, she's fine.
Yeah.
She's with her grandparents, she's fine.
Yep.
Yeah, she was. But
Yeah.
there were some things that she needed from her mom that I wasn't there for. So I had to build
Yeah.
and I had to repair that and I had to spend time with my family. And I was home and I was just like, okay. I said, husband, are we good? Because I want to go back outside. Because the work was calling me. It was in me. The work, I mean, the need didn't stop.
Yeah.
I just had to take a break.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so when my husband was on board with it, you know, I was like, okay. And now we're going to do this different. So someone told me about Rising Tide. And I was like, okay. I was like, because I need some help because I don't know what I don't know, you know? And it was honestly, it was almost kind of like my last ditch effort because I knew when I went back in, I could not go back doing it the same way
Yeah.
that I was doing it before.
Yeah.
And taking CBA was one of the best decisions. You don't even have to pay me for that, okay?
Oh.
Listen.
I'm so glad.
No, it really was because it opened up my eyes to so much. And like I said, I learned all of the gaps.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from I learned a lot through trial and error, of course, right? But then there were those gaps of things that I did not even know. Like, first of all, I was making up prices because it sounded good. I'm like, oh yeah, people could pay that.
Yeah.
Okay, but that price is based upon what?
Yeah. I know pricing is one of those most challenging.
Yeah.
It hits at worth too, right? So
Listen.
for a lot of women entrepreneurs, which is the majority of our entrepreneurs at Rising Tide, we struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I struggle.
Yeah, because but
I'm
you
like,
said it best. It was we have it tied to our worth,
Yeah.
where we have to be able to disconnect
Yeah.
from that. The work is the work. The business is the business. The numbers are the numbers.
Yeah.
They don't have anything to do with me personally. First of all, this has to do with the fact that there's rent in here that has to be paid. There are supplies that has to, you know, be bought. You know, all of those things. So base it upon that.
To be paid. There's
All
a
of those
whole value chain. Yeah.
There's a whole ecosystem going on that has to happen as a result of that. So you can't just pull down an arbitrary number and think that's a good number.
Yeah.
But is it? Is it really a good number?
Exactly.
And I learned that. I learned those things. And I was also challenged. You know, it challenged me. It challenged my thinking. It helped me to really get out of one, playing small.
Say more.
Yeah, playing small because it's like, yeah, like I said, especially with the price. Oh, okay, well then I'll do one here and I'll do one there. But why? Why do you do what it is that you do? And then how many people do you want to have an impact with?
Yeah.
You know? So like that whole thought process of it. So when I started putting it all together,
I'm so
it
glad.
made sense. And I was just like, wow,
Yeah.
these are the pieces that I was missing.
And those lessons, and I think particularly, and we're just really scratching the surface of this, you know, work, this vision on a, like the burnout issue,
Yeah.
like how, and then how that connects to how you price,
Yep.
like which then impacts, you know, the viability of your business and what you can afford and what support you can bring on board.
Yeah.
And it's interconnected. And so I've been really focused on working to imagine or reimagine what entrepreneurship should look like through the lens and experiences of entrepreneurs like yourself, myself. Like, we really can't afford to sacrifice the bedrock of what holds us as resilient, like our families,
Right.
our primary relationships.
Yep.
If our children are in shambles
Mm-hmm.
and we're out here even saving the world, quote unquote,
Yep.
it doesn't matter.
That's right.
There's a lot of that that I think is the general thinking, or is not even discussed. I mean, so much, as you know, all the stats around investment goes to mostly male entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying not to be hyperbolic, but the data is astounding, right? You know,
Mm-hmm.
so many women entrepreneurs are struggling
Right.
without investment, with invisibility, and expected to move,
Mm-hmm.
you know, mountains.
Right.
And so we really have to kind of go inward, start from within to say, why?
You
Why am I trying to move the mountains?
right.
Right? Why am I moving, you know, my pricing in ways that doesn't even support, you know, the well-being and the viability of the enterprise? And
Mm-hmm.
so I really like would love to, because I know you're thinking about an entrepreneurship school or a school, an
Mm-hmm.
empowerment school, which
Yes.
I also love, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and we've been talking about collaborating and what that might look like,
Mm-hmm.
in part because we also moved our community business academy into the empowerment studio in
Yes.
Newark,
Yes.
which was so exciting,
I love that. Yes.
you know. And so let's talk a little bit about that and what you're seeing in your mind's eye and what space you think women need, you know, to be able to benefit from the wisdom and skills and experiences you bring to the table
Mm-hmm.
too.
Well, first, I love that you guys were able to bring this Community Business Academy to the Empowerment Studio. And the fact that at the studio, and then I get to be able to facilitate that. Like, I think that is just that partnership and that collaboration is just like, it's a sweet deal.
It's
It
beautiful.
really, really is like, and I love that. But with opening up now the Empowerment School, one of the things that's really the hallmark of all of it is we we're always taught like, okay, business is on this hand, right?
Yep.
And then your personal life is on this hand, and then you separate them. It's not personal, it's business. This is actually personal.
That's right.
Okay,
Yes,
it's
it's still
personal.
you in there.
It's still you, and
Yeah.
so that the idea and what I've realized that women have been struggling with so hard is trying to figure out how to separate the two, and there is no separating the two because it's actually one. Because we do business from who we are. We do business from how we are, from how we live. So if you're a mom, if you're a wife, all of those things, those components. And actually, even some of the strategies behind how you mother and how you are, those interconnect into your business,
And your
right?
creativity and
All of
all of
those
it.
things. And
Yeah.
so the idea is just when I thought about it, I'm like, the idea is crazy to me for us to try to separate the two.
Yeah.
We can't separate the two. So when I thought about the empowerment school, it's personal and professional development. It's where they meet.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
love that.
it's where they meet. And so it's like we have to take care of the whole person.
Yes.
So yeah, business is the business part of it, right? So there are the numbers of it, you know.
Yeah.
There's how we do everything. But then there's the woman. If she's not okay,
Nothing is moving
the
forward.
business is not okay.
Yeah. And this is like just such a powerful point, and it's also part of how, you know, we've been talking about the terrapin, the turtle.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that for us is because at the Community Business Academy, you know, you learn to keep your personal and your business finances separate, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So there is room for mapping and planning what
Mm-hmm.
belongs where and, you know, categorizing things in such a way that you could see it more clearly,
Right.
right? You could manage it more clearly. But the values,
Mm-hmm.
your personality, your
Mm-hmm.
creativity, your sense of
Yeah.
purpose, how kind you are to yourself, so you can actually know how to be kind to others,
Mm-hmm.
including your customers and your vendors and your partners
Yeah.
and stakeholders. Your personal values around transparency and honesty, which then ends up showing up in how you connect with investors, with
Mm-hmm.
those you sign a lease with, or
Mm-hmm.
all of those personal parts of you show up in the values of your
Yep,
business.
they do.
And so when we talk about the turtle and the magic of the turtle and starting from within. The turtle has its head out, it's vulnerable. It's a being, it's not just a shell, right? But yet, on the back of the turtle, a lot is carried and there is a lot of code. And so we've been using the systems that we've been mapping on the back of the turtle to say, this helps us have mutual visibility. There is a purpose lantern at the center of this terrapin, this turtle. And we have a framework that we've built, it's a system that we've built. But that system carries us just like a business. It carries us forward. It can have others jump on board. It's very strong.
Right.
And there are lots of indigenous cultures and mythology that talks about the turtle, including the entire world being old turtle in indigenous cultures, particularly here in the US. And all over the planet, there are stories about turtles. And so we think about how a business or an enterprise is, yes, can be a thing that carries you forward
Right.
and brings others on board. So you're not literally carrying all of those things on your back or
Right.
personally, but your values, your personality, your creativity, your wellness, your wholeness shows up in the terrapin, in its vulnerability, in its resilience, and in its magical capabilities to inspire. And so it's, I think there aren't enough schools, there aren't enough empowerment spaces, and there aren't enough masterful facilitators and healers like you who can combine these pieces to say, yeah, your business matters.
Yeah.
And there is no business without you.
That's right.
And you being whole for
That's right.
very many important things. So I'm super excited to see this idea take hold.
I'm excited too. And I think listening to you about the terrapin and all of this, I need to develop my own. I got to get a spirit animal going on here to develop this story around it so that when I talk about it, there's this visual. I'm inspired, okay?
I love it. Here,
I don't know what it's going to be, but I'm going to get me something, okay? I'm getting me something.
The terrapin can come visit,
Okay.
Can hang out over where you're at too.
All right. Listen, we got
While you're
room.
away, because the turtles are carrying all kinds of people. Didn't I tell you I went to a vacation and I'm on the beach because I met these terrapins, these water.
Not you met them, okay?
They came to meet me, and
like
then
I met
was
them.
on the beach drawing the back of the turtle and to this fisherman and to his dad, and we're like in entrepreneurship and
you telling them the story?
Oh, absolutely.
So you just tell anybody and everybody?
Yeah, nobody's safe.
Okay, got you.
This is what happens when you get super inspired.
Yeah.
Or when something works for you.
Yeah.
And I'm curious about that too for you because, I want to talk about like flow and what gets us past some of these blockers and barriers. And for me, especially when COVID hit and we had to shrink and we weren't even sure if we'll ever gonna open again. And the health and well-being of our team members and our community members was being like literally, impacted in the most negative ways. It was extremely distressing.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, how can I crawl out of this? And the terrapin was literally like carrying me out and saying, hey, it's like stillness as movement. Just because you're still right now, because grief is a thing.
Yeah.
We grieve.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
it's a process. And when you're surrounded with so much anticipatory loss, and you're thinking, oh no, the other shoe's gonna fall, that dings you. So how do you move forward? So the terrapin literally carried me out. And I started getting joyful again. My energy part, I'm like, anticipatory joy.
Yeah.
How about that? Let's put some of that on the calendar. And so it has helped me find my flow.
That's good.
And so when you find that thing, then you're just going to keep talking about it to everybody.
Yeah, that's
like a
true.
Crazy person.
Yeah, no, that's true. You do. You kind of have to find that thing that drives you.
Yeah.
I think about, for me, I think mine's would be more so legacy for me. I can't necessarily say that my family has a long, rich lineage of anything really. We're all fragmented and disconnected from each other, right? And part of that is like we don't even know who's who, and when that's disconnected, you don't know who you are.
Yeah.
And so when you go on that journey for discovery, you want to be able to create something that's lasting.
Yeah.
So I want my great grandchildren
I love it.
to be like, that was my grandmother.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And she did this and she did that. And they can have those stories to tell, because I don't have those stories to tell. You understand what I'm saying? I don't have those stories. And I want my children to have those stories. I want my daughters to look and be like, that's my mom.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not,
I know they already do.
and you know what? And especially, my biggest cheerleader, my oldest daughter. And she says to me, she says, Mom, remember when we were growing up? I'm like, well, first of all, girl, we are not the same age. So we did not grow up. But I get what she's saying, because she was with me on the journey. Because both of my daughters are 13 years apart.
Wow.
Yeah, they're 13 years apart.
Yeah. So
and
they've seen you in different phases.
They got two different moms.
Yeah.
Yeah, they got two. My oldest daughter got one mom, and my youngest daughter, she's getting another mom, right? But she says to me, she's like, when we were growing up and we were going through the whole process, and she was like, oh, Mom, I remember I was with you. Remember we used to do classes downtown and we did this and we did that. Like, that's the stories that I want. And she champions me. And I can see her on her social media, and I'm in her stories and all this. She's like, yeah, that's my mom. And that's what I want. That's what I want. And I want their children to be able to see that and just be able to continue that, because I'm like, I don't have that to look back on, but I want my children to have that.
Wow.
Yeah.
May it be.
Yeah.
May it be, because I want your great grandchildren to look at this video and then say, that's my fabulous ancestor.
Yes.
And that's some lucky lady named Alpha over there who's getting to chat with her.
Yeah.
And how lucky I am.
Yeah.
Because you are powerful. Your spirit is so transformative. And your story of resilience is so remarkable. And it has blessed so many other entrepreneurs. So many community business academies you've facilitated. So many seeds you've planted. The river banks are nourished because of you.
Wow, praise God.
And whether we see it in our lifetime or whether it's for our great grand, we've done the work.
Yeah.
And you've done that work, and I'm so proud of you. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being a partner.
Thank you.
Thank you for championing Rising Tide.
Thank you. This was beautiful.
This was beautiful.
This was beautiful.
It was fantastic.
Aww.
In every way.
I had to stop talking because I felt like at one point I was going to cry.
I know. I was like, oh no.
I was like, okay, stop. Wherever you were going, don't go there, because I can feel something in your eye.
You're a pro. You're like, no.
I had to will it back.
Yes.
I know. I feel like because it's the story.
It's the founding story.
It's the founding story. It's like going back to the roots of everything.
Yeah.
Because, and then sometimes, to be honest with you, you really do have to go back to your roots to remember. And I think I said this to you the other day. Sometimes you can move so far away, and then you have to remember, why did I even start this? And sometimes, especially even when it gets hard, you got to go back to the why.
Yeah. Yep.
This is the reason.
Yeah.
The days when you feel like you want to quit.
Absolutely.
The days you feel like this is not going the way that I planned. This was not in the strategic plan because I wrote it. Okay? I wrote it. This is not it. And then you remember why.
I have my fun strategic plans. I look at them and I laugh. I'm like, I should start a comedy club
all
with
the
my
stuff.
Strategic plans. Point A, point B.
Yep, and we're gonna be
supposed to be.
And in 5 years, it's gonna be this, and it's just like,
oh no.
Yeah, it sounded good though.
It did, and you had to do it anyway.
You do
cut some stuff out.
Yeah, you
it's
do.
Necessary, but yes, I agree.
Yeah, no.
Your purpose and your why matters.
Yeah. This
And
was
I
good.
really appreciated what you said about the disconnect and the river of legacy, because we also have the land of disconnection in the greatest migration. And I put the rivers of legacy and rivers of belonging, but it's interesting to think about it in the context of, what you were describing and what it means to not know, like when everybody's scattered,
Yeah,
you don't know, like
you don't.
where did people go? Where did people come from?
Where but that's the biggest part.
Yeah.
Where did it come from? Just even think about how you referenced you coming from Ethiopia.
Yeah.
I don't have an origin story
Yeah.
of where we came from, where my family came from. Like I know, like I have family members who've done like ancestry.com and was kind of, looking back at those things, but nothing to where as though it's a tangible connection
Yeah.
to where we can trace and say, oh yeah, and I remember so-and-so telling me about this or that or any of those things. I'm gonna have that, and that's important to me.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's so many holes in my life and so many disconnected things that I am at, as the kids say, at this big age, okay?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
trying to
No,
piece
no.
all these
So
things
important.
together.
Yeah.
I don't want that for my daughters.
Yeah. And it's almost like being aware of it and being able to have the capacity to start telling new stories
Yeah.
and to honor also the story that exists.
Yeah.
Like I think for me it's so interesting because I have a lot of African American friends. I'm blessed in that way. Thank you, Lord. Uh, and we are in a predominantly African American community. And when we started that journey, people were like, "What are you doing here?
Yeah.
You're like not from around here." I mean, they would have said that regardless of where I was
Right.
from. But like, you're from Ethiopia. What are you doing here?
Right.
And for me, a lot of my learning, and because I was afraid of that question, I actually just wanted to go back home to Ethiopia and do this. But I sat in the question of
Yeah.
like, why am I being called to be here?
That's good.
What is my role? Because I feel very connected spiritually and to my ancestors, and my grandparents raised me.
Yeah.
And my grandmother is like a big, spirit. And like she wants me to sit right where I am. So what is it about me being here that is important?
But think about you having a pull on that. You
Yeah.
had that to pull
Oh, yeah.
from.
Yeah.
So not having that to pull, just think about it.
Yeah.
My mom being pregnant with me when she was 13 years old.
Yeah.
She didn't have a mother to raise her because her mother was killed when she was 5 years old.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just like, and then what happened? There were 7 kids by the time my grandmother was killed, right? They went to go and live with my uncle.
Yeah.
So it's just like it's like, so from that particular point, everything like stops. So but what happened before that? Like, how did we get here?
Yeah.
What's that whole thing? So it's just like there's a whole big chunk
Yeah.
of stuff that is just like,
Yeah. And then how do we piece it together, or how do we be okay?
that's the part.
do we
Because
accept
we may never get the history,
Yeah, exactly.
but we can create something new.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm doing, creating something new.
And I think that's so needed and inspiring, not just for us right here, but also for the world.
Yeah.
Because the world, in many parts, it's eating itself.
Yeah.
Like we're destroying each other.
She said it's eating itself. All right, I'm done. We can't even have no more conversation. It's the world done started eating itself, but that's powerful.
And so we have to, the dreaming, the vision, it's like without vision, the people perish.
That's right.
Right. So we have to bring back a picture to say the comeback story is here.
Yeah,
We have to write it.
that's what we're working on, the comeback story.
The comeback story.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I feel for those who are in the parts of the world who are at war, literally tens of thousands of people are getting killed every day.
Yeah.
And they're experiencing that trauma fresh.
Yeah.
There are orphans and refugees and people who are running for their lives, and they're experiencing the trauma that you and I are talking about, but they're experiencing it now.
Yeah.
And so when I think about what's the hope for them, this is the hope for them.
Yeah.
This is that the comeback story is coming.
Yeah.
You can write it.
Yeah.
And people who have particularly the African American experience, the Black experience in the US is so instructive because usually, when you dislocate people from their home cultures, when you disconnect, when you break that, and then you intentionally create an environment where they're disconnected, broken apart, and divided, and don't know where each other are, and then you use them as inputs into an economic system where they're not seen as full beings and humans. And then you say, okay, well, that's over. So everybody just, we're all good and we're moving forward. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, because we're not good.
We're not, yeah.
Yeah,
and,
we're not
and
good.
so the work of repair, the comeback story, because Black Americans are writing the comeback story.
Yeah.
They're living the comeback story.
Yeah.
They're showing the comeback story.
And because we have to.
Yeah.
We
And on a
have to.
global scale,
Yeah.
for people who feel like when you're dispossessed, when your land is taken, when you are feeling like, arbitrarily people that you love who are human are no longer there because somebody pressed a button somewhere, somebody
Yeah.
made a decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for them to be like, will we ever come back? It's like, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
And somebody has to tell the
people
story.
have come back
Yeah. Yeah.
and have lived it.
Wow. This is the work.
That is the work.
This is the work.
All right. Well,
This is the work.
So we come
Chris,
back for another.
we was going into a whole nother episode, okay?
We were going for that. Yeah, that's for our archives.
Thank you for tuning in to this very special conversation with Towanda. If you were inspired by her journey and the incredible work she's doing through A Life Recycled and the Empowerment Studio, you can support her work by visiting empowermentstudio.nj.com and by sharing her mission with your community. Future Tide Conversations is a special initiative of Future Tide Partners powered by Rising Tide Capital. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization with a mission to provide holistic and long-term support to the entrepreneurs and leaders building businesses and initiatives that advance human connection and well-being at the community level. We believe these enterprises are the cornerstone of a thriving future economy for every community. To learn more about our work, visit us at risingtidecapital.org. Be sure to follow our podcast and access new stories and resources by signing up at future.risingtidecapital.org. This mission is made possible due to the vision and generosity of committed supporters like you. Please consider becoming a sponsor or making a contribution as an investment in our work and impact. You can also support us by sharing this podcast with your friends and by leaving a rating and review. We extend our gratitude to our team, with a special thanks to our executive producer, Chris Van Nest, for his outstanding editing work, and creative director, Tigist Kalkai, for the evocative creative art and Media Hub.